of the 7th SANEM Annual Economist Conference 2024. The session will be on macroeconomy. The session will be chaired by Dr. Bozlul Haq Khandokar, Professor, Department of Economics, University of Dhaka, and the Chairman of SANEM. The discussant of the session will be Mr. Rabiul Islam Robi from Asian Development Bank. We have 4 presentations in this session. The 3 sessions will be in person and 1 session will be online. The paper presenters are Dr. Masudul Hasan Adil, Assistant Professor, School of Management, Indian Institute of Technology, Mandi, India. Mr. Akash Dev, PhD student, Shiv Nadan Institution of Eminence, India. Mr. Muhammad Mahbubul Alam, PhD student, Australian National University, Australia. He will be presenting online. And Ms. Deepa Das, Research Associate, SANEM. I request the Honorable Chair, the distinguished discussant, and the paper presenter to take their seats. I now request the Honorable Chair to conduct the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning again. So we have this session is on macroeconomy 2, and we have 4 papers. I think we have 6 minutes more, so we can actually give you 1 minute more. I mean, you know the rules of the session, so each presenter will have 10 minutes to present their paper, but I think we will give you 11 to 12 minutes. 11 minutes, try to finish it by 11 minutes so that we can have some questions from our participants from the floor. And then designated discussion will have 15 minutes to talk about the papers. Okay, so we'll start with the first paper. First paper is on the asymmetric effects of uncertainty on investment. This empirical evidence from India. This will be presented by Dr. Masudul Hasan Adil, Assistant Professor, School of Management, Indian Institute of Technology, Mandi, Himachal Pradesh.
Yeah, so good morning everyone. I am Masudul Hasan Adil, going to present my topic, asymmetric effect of uncertainty on investment, empirical evidence from India. So the outline of the presentation is as such. We would be first talking about the introduction, motivation, and potential gap about the research, then data and model, specification and the methodology to empirically testify that analysis. And then empirical analysis will be discussed. Then finally, paper will end up with the summary and concluding remarks. So starting with the introduction, as we see that in most of the previous studies, for instance, Solo 1957, Romer and Barrow, so many other studies have established already the importance of investment, which is change in capital stock, basically how important it is when we are looking for the aggregate demand and aggregate supply concept in case of ISLM framework, for instance. So if we talk about the investment, of course, it is one of the key drivers for the economic development and the growth. And in the Indian context, if you see the investment ratio, basically it increased a lot and reaches up to 34.3% of GDP in 2011 and 12. But what happened after the global financial crisis of 2008 and 9? It has been a drastic change, which come down almost in terms of growth, if you look at the data, so since it was in 2009-13, it was almost 7.8%, which drastically come down up to 5.8% in 2014 and 2019 scenario. So overall, if you look, there is a deceleration into the investment growth. So basically, this paper talks about what are the possible rationale or justification or economic factors, socio-economic or political factors, which led this investment to decelerate up to that extent. So looking at the previous literature, apart from the income and interest rate, uncertainty is kind of one essential important covariates which led this deceleration. So as Behmaniowski, Makineri 2019 paper established that of course these uncertainties could be the one of the factors. And of course, India has taken several measures, for instance, insolvency, bankruptcy code, GST, and so many policy factors into account. They considered it. Still, there is a deceleration continuously in the investment post-global financial crisis. So the motivation of the paper is as such that before global financial crisis, higher interest rate was accompanied with the higher investment. But after the financial crisis, low interest rate become accompanied with the low investment. So what kind of, which of course led to the consumer confidence declines, and the business activities has also hampered a lot because of the deceleration in the investment and that perception as such. So basically two potential gap has been set to pursue this study. The first one is that several studies have established already the relationship between policy uncertainty and other macroeconomic fundamental variables. For instance, stock prices, demand for money, and if you look at so many other studies are there with relation to policy uncertainty. But what the less explored relationship or macroeconomic fundamental is the investment. So here in this study, we try to establish the relationship between policy uncertainty and one of the important macroeconomic fundamental, that is investment. Then second is that earlier studies have looked this relationship in a linear fashion or symmetric way, but what we do in this study as a kind of to fill the gap is we are looking in a non-linear fashion or asymmetric way. The reason behind is that, of course, as we know, the increase in policy uncertainty might be having the impact on investment not as much equivalent to decrease in policy uncertainty, right? So when uncertainty increases, the impact of uncertainty increment on investment might be quite different or not exactly proportional equivalent to the when the policy uncertainty is going to decrease. So those increment and decrement impact could be dissimilar. So this kind of asymmetry is coming into the picture. So to capture this asymmetry, we have to go for the non-linear kind of modeling. So the objective of the study is to establish the determinants of investment. Apart from income interest rate, we are also incorporating this policy uncertainty and business freedom index. Then the novelty is being established in this study is that first we have gone for the non-linear unit root. Apart from this simple unit root testing, we have looked for this non-linear unit root test utilizing Hu-Chen's 2016 study. And then asymmetric error correction mechanism, short-run and long-run asymmetry, and then asymmetric Granger causality has also been taken into account. Then second is that we have also looked for the structural breaks, unlike previous studies who have ignored it or overlooked it. So we have looked for the structural breaks by applying the Zybot and Andrews unit root test. We got the structural break in case of India by so many, of course, socioeconomic happening had happened. For instance, this COVID-19, this GST implication of 2017 years. So these structural breaks has been taken into account. And then finally, non-linear Granger causality has been established apart from simple linear framework. So the data set of this study is as such. We started with the 2003 Q1 to 2021 Q1. So these are the variables, investment and this interest rate, business freedom, policy uncertainty. So model specification is as such investment as a functional form of income interest rate and business freedom and policy uncertainty. But my main concern is with the policy uncertainty. So the methodology is as such, we first go for the integration series property we will look for by utilizing augmented decoupleur and Fliss-Perron, and then nonlinear unit root by utilizing Hu-Chen nonlinear unit root. Then to capture that asymmetry, what we have earlier discussed in the slide, we use this nonlinear ARDL, and we establish the short run, long run asymmetry, and then dynamic multiplier, which also reinforce the asymmetry in the relationship. Then finally, to gauge the model adequacy, some series of conventional testing has been utilized for the nonlinear, for this functional form, heteroscedasticity, and on. So this is the functional form of nonlinear ARDL. The first one reflects the linear ARDL, and then we decompose the explanatory variables into positive and negative partial sum, and then we replace with the linear one. So it becomes kind of nonlinear in nature. So the empirical analysis, basically this is the simple unit root testing, which says that our variable is basically mixture of both I1 and I0, which again give the justification to apply the ARDL framework in a nonlinear way. So looking at the nonlinear unit root also, we get the nonlinear unit root in our study, and Zywit-Andrews test reflects the structural breaks, which is backed by the economic incidents. For instance, this 2020 COVID-19, then 2017 this GST implication in case of India, and so many others, like so many things are there, right? So now coming to the results, if you look at the asymmetric relationship, so basically first look at the long run co-integration, which is evident by the bound testing framework. So we get the F statistics 4, which is greater than the upper critical bound value. As we know, in case of bound testing, if the critical calculated value is greater than the upper critical bound, then we basically fail to we reject the null of no co-integration. So here we establish the existence of co-integration. And then long run effect we have been calculated, which is quite significant in concerned variable. For instance, this EPU, long run negative effect, is showing over here, which is significant at 1%. And then asymmetric has also been tested in short and in long run. So null of no asymmetry has been tested, where the p value is quite low. So we are rejecting the asymmetry. Of symmetricity we are rejecting and getting the evidence of asymmetry. And then finally, parameter stability is being tested by applying the OLS and recursive residue, this recursive QSUM and QSUM Q. The plot is over here. So these residual series are well within the confidence interval, so which shows the stability of the model. And this dynamic multiplier plot is there, so which reflects the further reinforce the asymmetric evidence what we got through the wall test statistics. So now coming to the conclusion, so and policy implication. So basically the extent of increased uncertainty of investment, of course the policy uncertainty impact on investment might not be the same when there is a decrement into the policy uncertainty and then their impact on investment. So this kind of asymmetry or asymmetricity is there in the nature of the policy uncertainty and investment. So that's why we use this nonlinear ARDL, and we get the nonlinearity and short-term, long-term asymmetry and all. Now coming to the main conclusion, because of the paucity of the time, so we find basically the long-run co-integration relationship using the nonlinear framework. Then second thing is that we get the short-run and long-run asymmetricity as well. Now what the policy authorities basically look for, they should, while making the policy framework, there should be the transparency and predictability in the nature of the policy framework. The policy makers, they can look the investment or this policy uncertainty nature kind of forward guidance basically to reduce the vagueness in the policy stance. Means whether the policy makers, it could be kind of conservative or accommodative. So there should be some clear forward guidance kind of things should be there. And then of course the nature of Indian investors sentiment is kind of risk averse. So they must consider into their mindset or policy framework that these policies, what they are going to establish should be stable, steady. Economic growth can be achievable if there is kind of clear-cut demarcation that what policymakers and central bank is going to do with this investment, and how much they are going to provide the business freedom, how much they are kind of giving the hedge or giving a safe haven to the investors to park their additional saving into the Indian financial market. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Masood, for an interesting paper in the case of India. And I will have one question, but later on. I will now request the next presenter, Mr. Akash Dev, to present his paper. I think this is a joint paper. Yes, sir. And you are presenting on behalf of the team. Thank you.
Very good morning, everyone. I am Akash Dev from Shivnadar Institution, India. I am here to present a macro paper on macro computation and calibration. This is a part of my PhD thesis, my job market paper. This is done under the guidance of Professor Partho Chatterjee from Shivnadar Institution, India. I start by motivating the crowd. Look at India, the global bright spot, showing exemplary growth figures, becoming the 5th largest economy in the world. Look at the labor statistics. What do you see over there? In the first panel, see, as a labor force, you could be either in the labor force or you could be outside the labor force. If you are within the labor force, you could be either employed, you could be unemployed, looking for a job. In the first pie that you can see is the distribution of the working age population between 3 categories: employed, category B as unemployed, category C as out of labor force. What is perplexing over here? The data corresponds to the time frame September to December 2023. That's the latest data available for the data that we are using. It's CMI, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, CPHS data. It's a pyramid household survey. What do we observe? A fairly large, around 55.92 is the exact percentage of the share of working age population who are outside the labor force. By technical definition, who is the one outside the labor force? They are the people who are voluntarily unemployed. Means you are unemployed, you are not even seeking employment. This is perplexing. Now look at the gender distribution of the same. The bottom 2 pies, to the left is the distribution for male, to the right is the distribution for female. What do we observe? Let's look at the female figure first. A very, very high figure. 87.07 is the share of women who are not in the labor force. The share of employed women is just 8.02, it's single-digit figure. That is even more surprising. And that is the reason why the overall figure is very high. The overall share of out of labor force is very high because the female workforce, very few females are in the labor force. And is this the case? Somebody will ask me, is this the case only for this particular time frame that I am considering? No. Here, if you look at the time trend, here what I am doing is I am looking at the time trend panel for the last 8 years, because the CMI data that I am referring to is available since January 2016. Consistently, the figure for out of labor force has been above 50%. So this is strange. With this motivation, the big question that I pose here is why? Why is the share of out of labor force so high in India? And as I define out of labor force, those who are choosing not to work. Why is the case? Why are people choosing not to work? Now, there exists some excellent literature which deals with the gender aspect of this. A few I have mentioned over here, some excellent work by Ashwini Deshpande and Kabir Deshpande and Singh, Sahu Sarkar et al., Sherverick. All these people have looked at the gender angle. There exist various socio-cultural norms for the reasons related to marriage, childbirth, other factors. Women are not in the labor force. So what are we doing? We are looking into this particular question from a macroeconomic perspective. What are we doing? We are trying to integrate the existing gender literature with our macro environment. In particular, we interact the macro environment with intra-household time use pattern. So I'll show you how we calibrate the model, how we calibrate the factors. We'll try to generate labor flow chart. The motivation is drawn from BLS US. Monthly they release the labor flow chart, which shows the transition of workers across various categories. This was not done for India. We are doing this for the first time. We try to calculate the transition probabilities. Then we try to build a macroeconomic joint search model of household decision making. It's a choice model. As I showed in the beginning, it's a choice. You choose to work, you choose to remain voluntarily out of labor force. Then we calibrate the model to Indian data, we compute it, we solve a complex system of 4x4 nonlinear equation. Then we try and do a few simulation to see and try to explain the low LFPR in India. The model. As I said, it's a household joint search model. We work under the broad frame of McCall-Mortensen framework. This was inspired by the seminal work of McCall and Mortensen, 1970. For those of you who are into macroeconomics and labor market, this is a very established work which looks at the choice decision making for an agent to enter the labor market or not to enter the labor market. What we do, we try to incorporate the household choice over here because it has been proven that household decision making is something which matters more compared to an individual decision making model. What we do, we try to create a household model of two agents, one husband and a wife. In Indian context, we can say it as partner one and partner two, had I been presenting this in the Western economy. What they do, the households, they maximize their expected lifetime utility function. The standard utility comes from consumption. We assume that each agent, each spouse in the household, they spend a fraction TI of the total time they spend out of 24 hours, they spend doing home production activities. By home production, the non-market activities that you do, which are not traded, so they are not valued in the market. So you have total time you spend doing employment activities. You could be spending in leisure. You could be spending in home production. We are not considering leisure over here. I will show why. So for us, the time is either you are working or you are doing home production. Then there are Poisson process job arrival shocks and job loss shocks as external job shocks. We assume this body of literature assumes an exogenous wage offer distribution. We assume a log normal distribution following a CDF as FW. There is no recall of past offers and there is no borrowing. So agents are hand to mouth. What you get, you consume. We allow for degree of risk aversion in the model. We assume a CRRA utility function. And for the want of time, I won't explain this in detail, and I'll get into the calibration part, the main meat of the paper. But quickly, I'll tell you, so now a household has, there are possibility of four states. Husband could be a worker, could be a searcher, and wife could be a worker, could be a searcher. So these four states will have four values function, and the values will be a function of the wages. Quickly, I'll go through the value. These are the recursive formulation, the Bellman equation. For the want of time, I will just explain one out of the four states. Let's explain state 2, for example. The value, the left-hand side of the equation for state 2 contains the discounted value of the utility for the state 2. And what is the right-hand side? When you are in state 2, you are a searcher and worker. So the utility that you get is wife gets no wage, husband gets no wage because husband is a searcher, wife is a worker, the utility is 0 WW. You are subject to a job loss shock SW. Then you move to state 4, when you become searcher. Other possibility, you are subject to a job arrival shock, lambda H. As a job arrival shock's consequence, you get a choice option. The person who receives job offer can choose to accept it. The moment he chooses, you come to a worker-worker state, that is state V1. Else the status quo is maintained. So there by definition, similarly, we'll be having four such Bellman equations. What the model is, the model becomes a system of 4x4 equations, which will give us four variables, four reservation wages, the threshold beyond which you accept a job offer, beyond which you will say, no, I don't want to work, and I'll choose not to work. These are the four variables, W star, superscript 1, and superscript 2, for subscript husband and wife. So W star 1 is when searcher-searcher couple, the husband accepts the job offer, you become a worker-searcher couple. And similarly, for all the four states, there are four variables. I'll be a little quick because there is less of time. Now, the main meat of the paper, the calibration. For a macro paper, how we calibrate this. To calibrate the macroeconomic environment, we refer to the CMI data, CPHS. It's a panel. It's a very recent and high-frequency data. What the data does, it covers some 170,000 households. It's a longitudinal panel. We try to look at particular set of workers, and we follow them. We track them across all consecutive CPHS waves for the last 24 waves. For the last 8-year periods, what we do, we try to see what are the main aim is to look into the transition Markovian probabilities. We calculate and we get something like this, a labor flow chart. The motivation, as I said, is drawn from the US BLS. This is a chart which we generate for India, which shows the probability of transition across the three states. the three categories of unemployed, employed, and out of labor force. If you can see, the above panel shows transitions from employed to unemployed, and the other is from unemployed to employed. Similarly, the lower panel shows transitions. These are the probabilities. What is the probability that a worker who was, for example, in the one particular CMI wave, you were under the employed category? What is the probability you will remain employed, or you will do a transition to any other state? Now, to encapsulate the time trend, as I said that literature exists which shows that women, they spend more time in home production. We look at the NSO data on time use. What is it showing? It is showing out of 24 hours a day, what is the share of various activities where men and women, they spend their time. Quickly, I would want you to notice here the difference between men and women. Why I said there's no leisure in the model. If you see, the time that men and women spend on self-care is almost the same. Self-care includes sleeping. Everybody sleeps. That's a known fact. Let's look at the share that women spend in unpaid domestic activities. It's double, more than double that of the husbands. That's one factor. What we are doing, we are trying to incorporate this with the macro environment. So that's how we calibrated all the parameters. The four probabilities, the job arrival and job loss, they are the probabilities which encapsulates the macro environment, and my THTW encapsulate the time share that you give for home production. Rest other are normal macroeconomic parameters. Beta we calibrate using data on nominal interest rate, and quickly YH, YW are the non-wage income. Surely, I'll take you to the result. As I said, the model generates 4 reservation wages values. These are the calculated, computed value of reservation wages. What do we observe? Look at the reservation wage of women. Look at the value for W star subscript W for superscript 1 and 2. It is more than husband. What does higher reservation wage imply? If you have a higher reservation wage, you will be less in number in the overall employment figure. And that's how what we see is women are less in equilibrium compared to men. And our model finds a higher reservation wage irrespective of the spouse's condition, whether the spouse is a worker or the spouse is a searcher. So higher reservation wage implies a lower labor force participation. We quickly do 2 quick simulations. One is we try to vary the macro environment. In the above 2 panels, you see when we vary the probability of job arrival to either of the spouse. As expected, if you are better positioned to accept job offers, you have a better bargaining power. You will have a better reservation wage. We see an increasing trend for reservation wage for both the couple and for all the 4 states. Similarly, in the lower panel, when the job loss shock is like you know that you will be subject to a greater job loss shock, you will fear that you will lose your job. In that case, you will get less choosy. So reservation wage gradually gets down. And the last simulation we do was basically, as I said, gender literature have focused on time share for husband and wife. What we do, okay, in our model, let's say there is no time production. There is no time for home production. In the lower row that you see, if the time THTW goes to 0, what we do, we get a different result. We get a lower reservation wage for women, which is not the data. So it does. The point that I want to make is, if we just consider either the time use or either the macro environment parameter, this is not explaining the data well. Rather, a combination of both, that's what the contribution of the paper is, a combination of macro environment, which is encapsulated by the probabilities, as well as by time use patterns. It explains the data of low labor force participation. And this has a policy implication per se, because we, and Bangladesh is no different, we want to have more labor force participation by the females, and that's what a policy implication of this work. And so this was the work. Thank you. Thank you.
Please have a seat. Thank you so much. Interesting paper. I think you tried to incorporate 2 issues in your model. And I think we all know that this is an issue for most of the South Asian countries, and more so like India, Bangladesh, we are having the similar kind of issues like low labor force participation of women, which we have been trying, but it's not working in that way. Let's see what the audience will say also. I have been working on not the macro model in that way, but in other, some kind of satellite things. So we can have some discussion on that. Our next presenter is from Australia. I hope he's online, and this will be a paper on deficit financing strategy and its impact on fiscal sustainability in Bangladesh. This will be presented by Mr. Muhammad Mahabubul Alam. He is a PhD student at the Australian National University in Brisbane, I think. Canberra, sorry, yeah, okay. Can you hear us? You need to unmute yourself. We are not hearing you.
Mr. Mahmood. Yeah, I can hear you.
Mahmood, can you speak, please?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, we can hear you now. Mahbub, you can start now, please.
Good morning. My name is Mahbub Alam. I'm presenting my this is a part of my thesis, one of the chapter. So in this paper, I looked at the fiscal sustainability in Bangladesh. So this will be the outline of the presentation. Background research question, econometric model, data and policy recommendation. So if we look at the background of fiscal scenario of Bangladesh, the government revenue is consistently low, which is hovering within 10%. At the same time, government expenditure has not also gone up that much. It's with a maximum 13%. As a result, the government has been able to manage fiscal discipline with a moderate level of fiscal deficit. So this is the government debt over the years and the primary balance, which is the government operating target. As a proxy for how the fiscal policy works in Bangladesh. So we see that public debt accumulated 50% in 1994 and from 22% from 1980, and the average primary balance is -1%, and the maximum most of the time actually the primary balance was negative, except from 1991 to 95 or so. So what was the main driver of Bangladesh fiscal stability? The main driver of the debt was the negative interest rate growth differential, which actually the main driver that stabilizes debt over the years in Bangladesh. So with this optimal debt dynamics, negative interest rate growth differential, government actually could afford expansionary fiscal policy over the years. So what are the sources of concern for debt sustainability for Bangladesh? Actually, the sovereign debt default episodes in emerging countries suggest that in 35% of the cases, the default occurred even within debt to GDP ratio within 40%. So what are the characteristics of those economy? Basically, a higher debt to revenue ratio, a higher debt to GDP ratio, a higher proportion of external debt, and low financial debt and overvalued exchange rate. So coincidentally, there are some characteristics which are similar to Bangladesh. So what are the concerns for Bangladesh? Historical evidence suggests that the interest rate growth differential actually rises as the economy matures, and also the concern is the low revenue base in Bangladesh, especially low yields and volatility, and lower financial debt, and also the depreciation of exchange rate, which we recently seen. So the history suggests that the interest rate growth differential is not sufficient to contain debt in the presence of expansionary fiscal policy, as our interest rate growth differential rises quickly. Empirical literature suggests that emerging market economies have much lower debt carrying capacity due to their inherent volatility and weaker institutions, suggested by the Reinhardt and IMF paper. So the research question is, what is the debt is the public debt too high in Bangladesh, and is the fiscal policy stabilizes the debt level, and what is the scenario with in the presence of shock? So these are the methodology I applied. Mainly the model-based sustainability test. I use constant regime switching and time varying parameter model, and I also use probabilistic approach by considering macroeconomic uncertainty in the model. So here the data source and the definition of explanatory variable. So in my first attempt, I used the model-based sustainability analysis from the seminal work of Bond, and the baseline model is I have designed that primary surplus equal primary surplus, and D, this is the one period previous year debt level, and this is the government temporary spending, and this is the business output gap. These two variables are calculated from Barrow 1986 and in line with Barrow 1979. I have also controlled the variables for external loan disbursement, terms of trade gap, inflation, government interest payment. I also include the non-variable non-linearity in the model, which include the square of debt to GDP ratio and in cube, and I also estimate the kinked version, how the government responds if the debt goes above the average level. So here is the wireless estimation. So this is the variable of interest, the feedback from the debt coefficient. In the baseline model, this is the baseline model. We see that the government temporary expenditure is significant, which means 1% increase in government temporary expenditure scale. Earlier 90 in the third model, since the fiscal objective sometimes is between stabilizing debt and also stabilizing the business cycle. So I use the interaction term between the debt and the output gap, which is also insignificant. In the fourth model, I use the debt square, which is found insignificant. And these variables are I have controlled for external loan disbursement, terms of trade gap, and inflation and interest rate gap. In government interest payments, in none of the case these coefficients are significant. So according to Bond, when the feedback of debt coefficient is not significant, which means the government does not respond to the debt. Some empirical literature find that there could be two regimes. One regime could be sustainable and the other regime could be not sustainable. We can calculate the long run, whether the debt is sustainable in the long run. So I use the Markov switching model in second attempt, where there are two regimes. In two regimes, the constant, the debt coefficient and the government temporary spending varies between two regimes. So with the time varying, with the regime switching model, I found that there are some state in regime one, the government actually responds positively to the debt coefficient. This period from, so there are some episodes where the government actually responds to the debt, but the some period where the government does not respond to the debt. So when I see the primary balance versus debt ratio, the period where the government responds to the debt in those period, actually in those period, the primary balance actually respond to the debt level. As a result, the debt actually decrease in those period, but the period where the government did not respond to the debt level, in those period the government debt level actually increased. So overall, I estimate the long run coefficient, which shows that Bangladesh debt is sustainable with a regime switching model, as the coefficient of sustainable regime is greater than the non-Ponzi game condition, satisfies the non-Ponzi game condition, that, and also it satisfies the debt stabilizing condition, and the both coefficient are less than the coefficient of sustainable regime. In another attempt, I use state space time varying fiscal reaction function with the Kalman filter, where I found that the debt coefficient was actually positive in most of the time, except from 2016 to 2020. In this period, the government response was negative. So when I calculated the primary balance and debt stabilizing primary balance, which means that the primary balance at which debt would not increase, I found that from 2015 to 2020, in this period, the government actual primary balance was less than the debt stabilizing primary balance, which indicate that the debt would increase. So the time varying parameter model capture this period.
Babu, I
Then
think,
I include uncertainty.
Hello.
Sorry,
I think
yeah.
you need to finish within 1 minute. Can you do that, please?
Yeah, sure. And then I also include uncertainty in the model, and I looked at the baseline scenario. By including uncertainty in the model, I found that the Bangladesh's debt is mainly remain stable with the baseline scenario. The debt could reach that 40% level debt to GDP ratio with the probability of 33%. And then I am also looking for alternative scenario with the rising domestic interest rate, rising foreign interest rate, a lower GDP growth, and 10% depreciation. This is basically still in work in progress, which I am still trying to fix it. So I will give shock to interest rate, GDP growth, and depreciation, and we'll see how the debt responds. That is all about from me. I would appreciate for any kind of suggestion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mahbub. Sorry that we have some interruption for 1 minute, I think. But thank you so much for being with us and complete the presentation. Thank you. We'll get back to you. Thank you. We have the last presentation by and she'll be talking about efficiency and productivity analysis of selected insurer in the Bangladesh insurance industry.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Today, I'll be presenting my master thesis, which I have done under the supervision of my professor, Dr. Shubir Sen, who is not present here. So the topics I will be presenting is the efficiency and productivity analysis of selected insurers in Bangladesh insurance industry. And we all know insurance is a financial product which helps us to reduce the cost of loss or effect of loss by different type of risk. As Bangladesh is taking gigantic strides on economic development, so this sector needs considerable attention. And in Bangladesh, the major type of insurance people usually take, that is for the life insurance companies. Sorry, that is for the life insurance. But currently there is again some growing demand for the non-life as well. The reason might be behind that is because of the rise in per capita income or rise in potential risk nowadays, or also might be because of the rise in awareness. So currently in Bangladesh, there are 81 insurer companies in total, and which is quite higher compared to other Asian countries like India, Vietnam, and Pakistan. And in these 81 insurer companies, there are 35 life insurer company and 46 non-life insurer company. Though the number is so higher, but the segment of life insurer accounts almost 77.67% of the total market share of the insurance industry, while non-life segment only accounts for 22.33%. And in terms of penetration, the overall penetration has been declining since 2009, and currently it is steadying at 0.5% only. And in this 0.5%, the non-life segment is only 0.1%. And the other part is 0.4%, that is for the life segment. And though Bangladesh is doing very well in terms of GDP and macroeconomic indicator, and it ranks 36 in the world, but in terms of insurance density and penetration, it ranks 85, which is very low compared to the other Asian nations and our neighbor countries. And Bangladesh has the lowest per capita among emerging Asian nations in terms of premium collection. So the potential gap of this industry in the literature we have found is that there is very few literature in the efficiency productivity analysis of insurance industry. And even though I found only one literature in which is based on the life insurance industry, and that is dated back in 2003. So our objective of the study was to analyze the efficiency and productivity of the selected insurers in Bangladesh insurance industry for both life and non-life segment, and also to see some factors, environmental factors, whether they are influencing the estimated efficiency and productivity score. So for this analysis, we have been used panel data for the year 2003 to 2021, 17 years, and the data was obtained from the Bangladesh Insurance Association. And for the analysis, we have considered 42 companies for the non-life insurance and 17 companies for the life insurance. We had to cut down the companies because all the companies' data were not available for the time span, and some new company has emerged currently, and some other old companies has closed down. And this analysis has been done in basically two stages. In the first stage, we have estimated the efficiency and productivity score using the Malmquist productivity index. And in the second stage, on the estimated efficiency score and productivity score, we have checked some influence of some environmental variables. So these are some of the literature. I will not go through from where we have considered our input and output for the analysis. And in the first stage, before going to the methodology, I want to say that the methodology is vast. So I will just very briefly discuss the methodology due to the time constraint. And in the methodology, we have considered data envelopment analysis based Malmquist productivity index. And basically, Malmquist index evaluates the productivity change of a decision-making unit or DMU, in other terms farms, between two time periods, and it makes a comparative statics in the analysis. And the Malmquist efficiency measure has two components. It can be divided into two components. One is efficiency change and technical change. So what we will be getting in productivity score, that we can again divide it into efficiency change and technically change. And that is because like we can say that this productivity is increase is because of the technical efficiency or the technically decrease in the efficiency. So this is the mathematical representation of Malmquist productivity index. I will not go through. If someone has any clarification, I will discuss this later. And this is the mathematical representation of our second stage analysis. Basically in the first stage, as input, we have taken management expense, total liabilities and share capital, and in the output, we have taken net premium, investment and net claim. And the rationale behind choosing this input and output is again literature and also the availability of the data, because for other variables, a lot of variables which was suggested by the literature, the data was not available. And in the second stage, we have used pooled OLS, and as the dependent variable in both life and non-life segment, we have run two models. In the model one, with the efficiency score we have estimated from the first stage, we have as dependent variable, we have efficiency score. As independent variable, we have size, market share, premium growth rate, ownership, and conventional and domestic. Where ownership is a dummy, where private, we have considered one for the private, and for public we have considered one, and conventional is a dummy, where for the Islamic insurance companies we have considered 0, and for the conventional we have considered 1. And again, domestic is the dummy, for we have considered the domestic insurance industry and the foreign insurance industry. And same variable, independent variable, we have also analyzed for the estimation of the productivity score. And this is the descriptive analysis, which is showing the difference between the life and non-life segment. If we see for the life segment, the mean of the variables is quite high. And for the non-life, it is showing it is very low, and it is again showing the difference between the performance of the two insurance industry. And in the result, we will summarize the result as we have considered the top 6 insurance company in the life and below 6 insurance industry in terms of productivity. And we can see that in the top 6 insurance companies, the productivity is gaining, and that is mainly because of the technological change. So if we divided the total factor productivity into the efficiencies and technological change, the productivity gain in the top 6 insurance industry is driven by the technological change. While in the bottom 6, who is performing very low in the industry, the measure behind low productivity change, that is driven by the technological change, which is very low. And in terms of the whole industry, we are seeing that the life insurance industry is growing, but the productivity gain is only 0.5%, which is showing from the mean. And in terms of efficiency estimation, we are considering the geometric mean here. And for the non-life segment again, we can see the top 6 insurance industry, which is performing very good. They are also very efficient in terms of both technological change and also scale change. But the bottom 6 insurance industry, they are not performing in terms of good, in terms of the technological change also and also scale also. So they are not adapting with the new technology, and also as there are a large number of insurance companies in non-life segment, they are not also performing in the proper scale. So, and in terms of the whole industry, we can see that the productivity is again gaining for the non-life segment, and it is compared to the comparatively to the life segment, it is comparatively less, and 0.4% only. And in the life segment, Rupali Life Insurance is showing the highest performance with productivity gain of 0.5%. And for the non-life segment, South Asian Insurance Company is showing the highest productivity index. So in terms of the whole scenario, this is the summary score, and we can see out of 17 insurance companies which we have considered, 10 insurance companies having productivity gain and 7 is having productivity loss. In terms of non-life insurance, out of 42 insurance companies, only 26 is having productivity gain, and rest 16 is having productivity loss. So we have tried to see if there is some trend in the efficiency and productivity change, which we couldn't find. There is no overall trend. This is the result for the regression analysis, and I will be coming in the last slide and discussing this. Both the model in life and non-life, it is showing that the model is a very good fit, but in terms of market share, premium growth, ownership, the life insurance companies is showing insignificant result. It is showing that the regression model revealed that market share, premium growth, and ownership type and the type of insurance companies are significant in determining the efficiency score and productivity change for the non-life insurance companies. But for the life insurance, it is only true for the market share. For the other variable, it is insignificant. And also, the result shows that the private firms are found to have a positive impact on the efficiency score, where the conventional insurance companies have a negative impact on both efficiency score and productivity change. And private-owned companies, and the conventional insurance companies, in the terms of the insurance companies which is following the Islamic Sharia rules, they are having more productivity compared to the companies, conventional insurance companies. And also, the study find that as the firm size is increasing, the firm is becoming less efficient and less productivity, which has been similar to the study found in 2013 by Rahman et al. And the life and non-life insurance industry both has shown the productivity due to the change of technological change, but the non-life industry should be given more emphasis to the scale, because they are not running in the proper scale. And that is the funding I have found. And the limitation of the study is we couldn't consider a lot of variables because of the data constraint. And further, we can have this study using other input and output variables, and also in terms of other efficiency measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepa, for a good presentation on a subject or industry that not much work has been done. So thank you so much. We have a designated discussion for this session, and he is Mr. Robiul Islam. He works in Asian Development Bank. Robi, you will have 15 minutes on this 4 paper.
Excuse me. Thank you. And let me first congratulate all the 4 presenters. I think all the papers were very interesting, and let us first congratulate them for doing an excellent job and sharing their research findings. I'll be talking about 2 aspects. One is about the results and findings, and also about presenting the results when we are making these sort of presentations. So there will be 2 aspects. The paper on the asymmetric effects of uncertainty on investment by Dr. Masudul Hassan Adil. And I think one way the study could benefit is like through, just to complement the findings that came up, with conducting some interviews with the investors, and to see that what are their perceptions, because as the model considers the business freedom index and other uncertainty factors are also coming up, the model talks about the COVID-19 impact also in the and it also has a implication for the model. So my suggestion would be that to have conduct some key informant interviews with the investors, and also see their perspectives and findings, and match those with the model that where those are complying, or there are contrasting views that can add a different dimension perhaps on the paper. And also when we are drawing the policy recommendations from the findings, I think that would also help when these sort of interviews are made. And also when when you are interpreting or sharing the results, it would be also interesting to share that to what percentage change these changes are happening. Like what percent of uncertainty change can influence the results, to what extent. So, and sharing those results would be, I think, beneficial. And these can have important policy implications as well. And moving on to next paper on Mr. Akash Dev on labor force participation. And it also considers the macro environment and household decision making. And I think one way, I think one dimension could be also added in your analysis that about the productivity issues, the productivity of the male and female that we are considering. Because we have seen that there are differences in the time that are used in the household and unpaid care activities. So one dimension could be that consider the productivities of this. And also, when sharing these results, it would be also helpful just to, if you add that, what are the macro environment factors, like their degrees of impact on the decision making, because you have considered different simulation scenarios, right? Now, and you're saying that on the conclusion that the macro environment and household, these have also influence, which we understand. But it could be interesting to rank those factors that which are having the most impact. And in that way, it could help you draw further policy implications that which macro environment influences these decisions most, and which may not have any impact at all. So that is one observation. Then moving on to the next paper by Mr. Mahbul Alam and on the deficit financing strategy, a very interesting paper. And I think one of the ways the paper would further benefit is that as from the next few onward, for few years onwards, like projecting as the paper is considering different shock scenarios. So it would be interesting to see that what are the debt commitments that Bangladesh had in the next, say, for 1 decade, and how, and the composition of those debt as well, like what are the project finances or foreign finances, and break down those disaggregations. So looking at these disaggregations could add a further dimension to the study that how the Bangladesh is going to finance those debts, and also it could add further insights to the deficit financing strategy that Bangladesh has. And as the author has already mentioned, that there are some alternative shock scenarios that the author is presenting. And one of the observations that I would like to add on the paper is when we are drawing the policy recommendations, and those recommendations should not be too generic. This is not only for this paper, but also for other papers as well. That if you're talking about that, okay, undertaking fiscal reforms, then what sort of fiscal reforms are necessary, and that are based on the findings of the paper, we should make it more concrete. And that's how we add more value to the research that we are doing, because whenever we are presenting any sort of research to the policymakers, they would also want to know if it's an academic paper, then, and if it's if we want to make it of interest to them, they would also want to know that what are the policy suggestions that are being drawn from that particular paper. So I think making it that more concrete and relevant would be good. And finally, the paper on insurance by Deepa Dash. As Sir has already mentioned, this is an uncharted territory, very less work has been done. So well done on this paper. And one thing I would like to suggest that the paper shows that that efficiency change is higher with the farms, for the life insurance farms, for the with higher technological change, right? So it would be interesting to see if you could interview of those farms and talk with them, that what are the technological changes that are happening at the farms? What sort of technology? Because when we work in a model, we talk about technological changes, a lot of factors come in. So if you look at what sort of initiatives they are taking, or what are the improvements in technology that you're having, where there has been change in sort of app-based providing the services, or the web-based services, or their marketing policies have improved, or marketing campaign strategy has improved. There can be a lot of factors. So it would be interesting to see, and it can add further dimension on the analysis as well. And also, on the non-life segment, it would be interesting if you could add the disaggregation of the non-life segment, because if you see in the Bangladesh life segment, life insurance is the biggest one, but on the non-life, what are the key sectors that are operating here? And that can further add to the policy implications as well. So these are my few takes on the paper. And I would just also take this opportunity to share that when we are presenting these researches in the audience, in the conference, it would be helpful, like as the charts and analysis of your hard work you are showing on the slides. So if you could put one concrete message on the findings on results slide, that's how one way we could retain the audience, or also make your hard work and the research findings more visible. Because when there are 4 or 5 charts, then what happens that audience kept looking at these charts, not hearing towards the speaker, and that's how audience get lost, or you lose the audience. It's a common mistake that we make sometimes. So one way it could be that you make those messages clear on the results slide that you want the audiences to take away with. And that's how I think the results that you're sharing could be more impactful among the audience, and they can think about those issues. So that's my few issues. I think Sir has more points to take on the technical and the model specification issues. So I would leave that to Sir. And thank you so much. And I would like to thank again the presenters for their excellent job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie, for an excellent discussions on the 4 topics. Very, very difficult topics sometimes. I mean, like, you people are always, upfront, no, on the frontier. So we are old, and I'm not much on, like, all the econometric models that you have presented. But, so I have been told to, like, close this session by 11:20. So we will take some questions or observation from the audience, and maybe 3 or 4. Please state your name and please be brief. জোরে বলো, তুমি মাইক লাগবে? জোরে বলো।
Thank you. This is Tuhin Ahmed, lecturer of economics, Maulana Bhasani Science and Technology University. I have just a clarification for the first paper to Dr. Masoodul Hassan Adil. You mentioned in your paper the policy uncertainty. So my question is uncertainty is a variable that you used? Actually, how did you measure the uncertainty or policy uncertainty in your model? So that's the one question. And the second question is Mr. Akash Dev. Just I want to understand what is the rationale of choosing the SARS model, right? So you are trying to explore low labor force participation rate at using household factors. So here also we can use the Logit or Probit models using the household level data, or the macroeconomic factors. We use other models as well, but why actually used this model? And the final comments on Mrs. Deepa Dash. We know across the industry, in insurance industry, there are individual heterogeneity. Across the industry, not all industry are the same, or their policy or their management, they are different. but you used the pooled OLS model. So when there is heterogeneity in the model, to remove the heterogeneity problem, we use a fixed effect model. So I would like to just understand what is the rationale of pooled OLS? Why not fixed effect in your regression analysis? Thank you.
Thank you, Tuhin. So we have 3 questions for 3 paper presenter. Anyone else want to ask any question or any observation? Yes, please. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Ahulla. I'm an undergraduate student. I'm currently studying in the Department of Economics in the University of Dhaka. My first question is for Dr. Masudul Hassan Adil. So I wanted to ask is, if you remarked about the uncertainty that the effect it may have on investment. So is there any way the productivity and efficiency of investment or the returns to investment could have been impacted by economic policy uncertainty? And is there any way to acknowledge for this in the model? And my second question is for Mr. Akash Dev. You mentioned the unpaid care work burden. It often acts as a constraint for women to enter into the labor market. So first of all, is there any way that to resolve or to reduce the unpaid care burden on women? And secondly, there's a mindset that you can get women to work for free. They have lower bargaining power. So could this be a contributing factor as to why women get paid less than men? Or could the unpaid care work burden have contributed to a gender wage gap in India? Thank you.
I will take another question. So the last question, yes, please.
Sir, I am Hasibul Hassan. I am from Department of Economics, University of Dhaka. So my question is for Mr. Mohammad Mahbubul Alam. Actually, in the paper, I have seen that all the primary balance during the COVID time, that went down. But after that, that had a rise. But in the year of 2022, there is a spike. Actually, the balance actually started to fall down. So I wanted to know that, is there any specific reason that, again, after the rise, we expect that this will go like forward or this will rise. But there was a downward trend and there was no COVID actually in 2020. So if there is any reason for that dip.
Okay. Thank you. I have some observation, like we may not have some time. I will give you, each of you to respond, some time to respond. For the first paper, I think a very interesting paper, is there any, like I have one observation on the data, like, I mean, is there any reason that you took 2003 to 2021 quarter, or, I mean, is there any structural break or any reason to take that, I mean, series? Other is that in Bangladesh, I mean, like, this is a very difficult issue, no? I mean, asymmetric information, I mean, information going to every small investor, large investor. Possibly there are also, in terms of like advantages for the large investor compared to small investor. This is, I mean, like countries like us there. What are the policy stand that, I mean, the Reserve Bank of India is taking? Do they publish like monetary statement yearly or quarterly? I didn't see that in your paper. So this could be one way of like trying to give some information to the investor and other also. So in Bangladesh, we used to have like, I think we're coming back to like 2 monetary statements, one in January and one in July. So we have 2. So if we can add on that, I think also, I understand these are like academic paper. I think full of academic paper in that way, a lot of equation and all those things. But as Robbie was saying, that sometimes if you put too much on the equation in the audience, like all of us in 10 minutes will not be able to capture all those things. So some of the headline findings can be just stated, and these are the policy, policy issues that we can think of. I think the next, the paper by Akash is very interesting one, and it's close to my heart also. A lot of other works are happening around the world, like as one of the question was, what could be the policy? And I think the most difficult part, one thing I was thinking, we could understand that reservation wage for wives will be, or female partner will be higher compared to, but is there any reservation wage that you say that, okay, this is the reservation wage that will transform them from non-active market to active market? So is there a reservation wage that you could calculate in the case of India if, I mean, that is one challenge for you. I don't know whether you have calculated that one. The other is that the social norm or the family norm are very difficult to break through. I mean, this is like the macro side, you probably have more handle compared to the household, like intra-household allocation, distribution, or decision making. So I think, we have seen like the care services, the effort to like bringing women out of like this non-active role to active role through other efforts. So I mean, possibly your paper is looking to that one, but it will be interesting to supplement those in that way. The paper by fiscal sustainability is very important in the context of Bangladesh. I think even so, because we are struggling with a very low tax GDP ratio. I think one of the lowest in the world. And it's falling. I mean, that is the painful part. I think Mahmoud has done a lot of work. I think this is plenty of work he has done, but I think some of the policy question or what are the major uptake of the paper, it needs to become quite clear that this is the like a policy decision that government can take. Finally, I mean, Deepa, your paper is quite interesting, a new paper, but I was like, the last point, you talk about that if the farms are becoming too large, that efficiency drops. It seems counterintuitive to me, no? Like normally we find that like if you're becoming larger, you have scale economies, efficiency. So what are the reason of that? I mean, like, can you explain that other issue? Possibly you're tackling that, like as you have rightly pointed out, the insurance penetration is very low in Bangladesh. And low, I think I was interesting to see also that is low for non-part insurance, no, compared to life insurance. So what are the reasons and what can be done to increase the penetration? I think this is one of the poorest segment or weakest segment of our financial system, no? With that one, I think I will request Adil to respond.
Hello. Yeah, am I audible? Yes. Okay, so first starting with the sir's question, what he asked. Basically, you asked about the data set. So the data set basically starts with 2003 because of the availability of the uncertainty index. So that index was available since that time period, so I taken into account that time frame. And coming to the monetary, like you said, this RBI central bank statement. So yes, like you are having a twice in a year, so we are having a bi-monthly monetary policy committee statement. So it is clearly given on the RBI website, and for each and every move what the central bank is taking, policy rate increment or decrement. So there is a specific panel members, like 6 committee members are there, and they are giving their vote and their justification why they are voting for the withdrawal of accommodation or conservative or accommodative stance of monetary policy. So each and every rationale they are mentioned in the committee report. Now coming to the economic policy uncertainty, so it is a basically index which consists of different macroeconomic variable. For instance, economy, economics, uncertainty, uncertain. Lot of words are there which is given into the newspaper, and then that wordings being compiled into an index which is being made by the Baker 2016. So basically one complete group of the policy uncertainty group is there, which is maintained by the Baker. So these group basically maintain that, and it is an index. So it is monetary policy index and this policy uncertainty index, Twitter-based uncertainty index. So a lot of indices they maintain. So what I use here, it is the economic policy uncertainty index I use basically. Now coming to this earlier question, so what she asked related to investment. So we just check for this domestic investment in India as such. But yes, investment productivity and all, I didn't check that. Thank you for that insightful comment. Definitely in future scope of work, we can look for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful comments and feedback, sir. So I will respond to the honorable discussant and the chair first, and then I'll respond to your questions. So on the very first point that you made about productivity angle. So as I said, it's a series of work. It's my PhD thesis. So we have other series of work where we are trying to incorporate the productivity shocks. What are those shocks? The point is to capture that. One way we are capturing that is by incorporating child shock. The moment a child is born, it is expected that women's productivity would be reduced. That's one channel through which we are checking that. The other channel that we are observing is the presence of full-time and part-time jobs. Sir, I would like to point this out. This is very strange to me that data that we use, it points to a minimal presence of part-time jobs in India. And that is the case I expect for the South Asian economies as well. Because by legislation, there is no definition of a part-time work. In the West, if it's a threshold of 40 hours a week, so we call it a part-time versus full-time work. In India, and I am sure about, not 100% sure, but I am sure about the same would have been the case for Bangladesh economy as well. So yeah, we are still looking for other ways to capture productivity, and that's a wonderful comment, sir. On the second point that you made about the rating of the macro environment, I think that question is related to the question that you asked as well. So if you see, and if you look at the calibration, because of short of time, I did not present a lot. The calibration parameters that we have used, the market is unfortunately male biased. The macro environment that we are looking at, the shock of arrival, the rate of job arrival shock to male is almost triple that of the case to the women. And the rate of losing a job, the job loss shock is higher for the female. So the market is unfortunately male biased. And we are looking at equilibrium parameters, sir. So the wages that we get is the equilibrium market wage. And the wages, there exists disparity. So on rating per se, in the simulation, we have tried to show that the moment the arrival of job probability goes up, you become more confident, and that is true for male and female. And for female, the trend is below male. So that is again, in a sense, capturing that. And we'll try to rate it as you said, as you suggested, and that's a very good suggestion, sir. Now the question to the answer to the Honorable Chair about the actual wage at which the real switch will happen. It's very difficult to get, sir, because why I would say the model calculates a monthly reservation wage. So we have got some, for example, 1400 rupee a month was the reservation wage for one particular category. Means if you offer me a wage offering anything more than 1400, I'll say yes, I am happy to accept. But look at the data. The data gives us a distribution of wages. There is a minimum wage at which somebody is working. Even if we eliminate the zero wages, because there will be data errors, so there will be some, we got something as 800 as the minimum wage. So even by that proportion, we were getting around 80% of the people who are actually working above the reservation wage. That's one way. We are still thinking, and I would like to discuss with you what would be the other channel to look at that. Now the answer, I think your question was the wage gap. Yes, it exists in the data. As a policy formulation, see, we are working in a macro setup. We are taking what is the equilibrium value. It's a calibration parameters, we take the equilibrium values. As a policy setup, if you ask me, yes, there exists wage gap. There should be more government schemes as a way to promote more women to enter the labor market, and XYZ, a number of other programs. But we are not getting into the policy in the paper. We are just trying to look at the macro environment which is impacting it. And the last question, the response to you, sir, why search model? So, sir, it's a debate, as in I would say, between an econometric model and a macroeconomic model. When somebody says that we work in a macro domain, and in a very layman's term, I would try to explain, in a macro setup, you can vary up to any n number of parameters at a time. So when in an equilibrium equation, we have, in my equation, we have 4 equations and 16 parameters. And I have the liberty to vary all the 16 parameters at a time. Had I been doing this with an econometric equation, and I am not competent enough to comment on that, but my idea says that we can't. We can't vary the 16 parameters at a time. So that is one of the reasons why we selected this, and this was my PhD thesis, so I have full right to defend my work that I did. And I mean, later at some stage, we would also like to look at this question from an econometric point of view. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Deepa?
Thank you so much for your valuable comments, because this is my first presentation in any conference, so I think it will be very insightful for me. And so as you have asked me about the size, as literature in efficiency and productivity suggests, the size can be positive or negative in both terms. So it is not showing actually contradictory result, because size might be bigger, but they are not, might be like efficiently working, or they cannot manage the productivity properly. It might be the reason. And what can be done in terms of that, with my needed knowledge, what I have gathered that as I have said, there are a large number of insurers in Bangladesh, almost 81 compared to India. In India has only 59 perhaps, if I am not wrong. So like they have a vast people. So in terms of our country, compared to our population, we have more insured. So like all the insurance companies are not needed because like if we see the insurance density, it is very low. So in terms of population, we have more insurance companies than we need. So that is not the efficient solution, but what I think is the thing we should work on is the trust. The people doesn't trust the insurance sector properly, and also there is a very lack of awareness among people also. And as we have already seen, that technically the insurance companies might not be like working efficiently, which sir has suggested that we can visit. I will surely do that. I will see what technology the best performing firms are doing. I will see into that. And Tuhin Bhaiya, what you have suggested, that I have considered that that is the limitation of my study. I can also check for the fixed effect and random effect, and as the efficiency score is varied from 0 to 1, so I think I should also go for the logit model also, to logistic regression also I should run. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepa. Mahmudul is online still? Mahmudul?
Yeah.
Do you want to respond to your questions?
I
you have
think,
1 minute, please. Yeah, okay.
In the later part of the graph, the primary balance could rise. It could be due to reduced government revenue or higher government expenditure. And if you see the budget cost, the debt equation that is derived through the government budget constraint, if the gap between real interest rate and GDP growth, if the gap is negative, this create favorable debt dynamics, which is offset by the expansionary fiscal policy. So even if the fiscal expansion is reduced, but if the gap between interest rate and GDP growth reduced, then the debt could be increased. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahmudul. Thank you so much. I think with that we will conclude our session. I'd like to thank the presenter. Thank you so much, and also the design discussion. We can actually have applaud for them, a round of applause. And I think we also have some certificates for you, and I'll be going to give that to you.
So the first certificate is for Dr. Masudul Hassan.